An evil leprechaun is accidentally unleashed, and he wreaks chaos while searching for his precious gold. It's a pretty simple premise, with plenty of room for all sorts of interesting possibilities. And yet, a majority of audiences and critics were not too receptive to this film. It was frequently criticized for being stupid, with an antagonist that really wasn't terrifying at all. This review was requested by James Moss. So without further ado, this is my review of Leprechaun. You know, I walk the same way if I gotta wear heels. This would be the titular Leprechaun, played by Warwick Davis. After it's established that he loves gold and rhymes, we're introduced to Mr. Daniel O'Grady, played by the late Shay Duffin. As he informs his wife, played by Pamela Mont, they're now rich. Apparently during his trip to Ireland for his mother's funeral, he caught a leprechaun, and made him give him his gold. What Mr. O'Grady doesn't know is that you can't just take gold from a leprechaun without repercussions. Daniel knows the leprechaun's weakness though, which happens to be a 4-leaf clover. Lucky for some, not for him. Especially since Daniel's able to use it, and some bullets, to seal the leprechaun away. Unfortunately, Daniel isn't able to light the sucker on fire before he has a stroke. 10 years later, Tori, played by Jennifer Aniston, and her father, J.D., played by John Sanderford, now have possession of the O'Grady house, much to Tori's dismay. You see, she's an urban California type of girl, so this rural and in need of repair house is the last place she wants to be. However, something does convince her to stay, and that will be Nathan, played by Ken Olant. We're also introduced to Nathan's little brother Alex, played by Robert Hy Gorman, and his friend Ozzy, played by Mark Holton. Now between the two of them, there seems to be only one who is intelligent, and it ain't Ozzy. Tori and Nathan come across the crate that Mr. O'Grady had trapped the leprechaun in, and are about to open it when they get distracted by Ozzy, getting doused in paint. Ozzy goes inside to clean up, and hears what sounds like a little girl singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Sir, you are white, the comic relief, and the token big friend. You have no business acknowledging that shit. Clearly, Ozzy didn't take my advice. At least he handles this situation well. All four of them return to the basement, but naturally the leprechaun is nowhere to be found. They do find a rat though. Going back outside, there's now a rainbow, or as Ozzy calls it, a magic rainbow. Logically, he claims there's gotta be gold at the end of this rainbow, so he and Alex pursue this idea. They do indeed find the gold that Mr. O'Grady hid in an old truck, but as Ozzy recalls, this is what the leprechaun is looking for. But who cares about that? Are these coins actually gold?
You just bite on it. I seen it in the movie. Ugh. Oh my God. I swallowed that gold coin.
What? And I mean this with all my heart. The actual fuck. What exactly is this man used to eating that would make deep-throating something bigger than a silver dollar that easy?
We can go to the hospital and have them operate and fix your brain.
I take back what I said before. There's not a brain cell between them. On a side note, is this ableist?
Regular Picasso.
No, those shorts are Picasso. That's just poor choices in exterior paint. While Tori retrieves some more paint, she assumes that the leprechaun caressing her leg is actually Nathan. Hold on. I'm looking for a single IQ point in this rural wasteland. Surprise, surprise, Tori discovers that this couldn't have been Nathan, and gets some scratches for her lack of realization. Speaking of, JD, Tori, and Nathan assume it was a cat that caused this and go to investigate it. JD gets a sufficient chunk taken out of his hand, but what do you expect when you stick your whole arm into an ominous hole? They rush JD to the hospital, and Ozzy and Alex go to a professional, played by John Volstad, to help identify one of the coins they found. He decides to keep it overnight so he can properly research it. This turns out to be a poor life choice, as the leprechaun shows up on a tricycle. Now I can say I've seen death by pogo stick. Before leaving the shop, the leprechaun gets an upgrade. Sort of. By stealing a toddler-sized RC car. I'm not surprised that he gets pulled over. But of course, the cop doesn't stand a chance against a 2-foot-tall supernatural being. Thank God he's got a fucking baton. We get a bit of a montage of the leprechaun polishing each of the shoes at the house. Which begs the question, is this a Quentin Tarantino origin story? Upon returning, the four find that the house has been semi-ransacked. and their shoes have been cleaned. This is the chaotic energy I strive for. I'll rummage through all your food, but I'll organize your closet by color. Well, Tori still wants to leave this place, and Ozzy insists that this is the fault of the leprechaun, which leads him to ask Alex if he could kill a leprechaun.
You can kill anything. You just gotta know how to do it.
Considering there are 7 more of these films, I think I can disprove your theory on that. Suddenly, the group hears the sound of a bike bell coming from the kitchen, so Nathan goes outside to investigate. This has the same energy as that scene from Rock and Roll Nightmare.
Well, it sounded like the scream came from down here. You're right, let's go upstairs.
I would ask that a CAT scan be done on each of them, but my expectancy of any of them surviving is low. Aim for his Lucky Charms! Aim for his Lucky Charms!
Help! Help! It's happening! The attack is on O'Grady Farm!
To be fair, even if Ozzy had been the smartest person in town, these are horror movie police. They'd still be useless. Well, that takes care of Thumper, but what about the leprechaun? Taking Nathan inside, Tori instructs Ozzy and Alex on mending Nathan's leg, so they can get him to the hospital. Nathan reassures them that he shot the leprechaun 6 times! I hate to tell you this, Nathan, but you didn't shoot shit. So they get Nathan out to the truck and... wouldn't you know it? It won't start. That means Alex has to get out and fix it, leaving him vulnerable to attack from the leprechaun. Using the truck's lighter, Tori fends him off though. Unfortunately, aside from being a shoemaker, this leprechaun is also a mechanic, who's made his own battle bot, which somehow manages to flip the truck. We're not applying logic here, we're not applying logic here. So back inside the house they go, where Tori calls the police using her portable. It was the early 90s, it was the early 90s. The sheriff, played by the late William Newman, radios the deputy to check this out, but the leprechaun has previously killed him, and is impersonating him. Ozzy mentions the gold that he and Alex had found, which leads Tori to make Alex tell her where they hid the rest of it. Going out to the old well, Tori retrieves the gold, and gives it back to the leprechaun. There's just one problem with this resolution, and Ozzy ate it, so the leprechaun isn't finished with them yet. Nah, we've already covered that horror movie. Nathan finally manages to shoot him, but we all know it's gonna take more than that. No? You just ripped that thing from the wall, and now it's literally ringing off the hook. You're not gonna answer that. Huh, combination A Nightmare on Elm Street and Scary Movie 2. Ozzy tells Tori and Nathan that the reason the leprechaun still won't leave them alone is because he had swallowed one of the coins. You know, if they waited a few hours, the problem would fix itself. Leprechaun probably won't want to lick that coin though. However, they don't have that kind of time. I mean, there's only 20 minutes left in the movie. So Ozzy suggests that they talk with Mr. O'Grady, who happens to be in a nursing home now. Tori heads to the Jeep while Ozzy and Nathan distract the leprechaun by throwing shoes at him, so he can clean them. This must be what it looks like when I get distracted by colorful and shiny things. Tori sneaks into the nursing home, which turns out to be the easiest task of the night, and finds Mr. O'Grady's room. Unfortunately, the leprechaun beat her to him. Now I can also check witnessing a leprechaun using a wheelchair from NASCAR off my list. Good news for Tori is that Mr. O'Grady isn't totally dead yet, and tells her that a fresh 4-leaf clover is essentially the leprechaun's kryptonite. Upon returning home, Tori immediately looks for a clover, only to be caught by the leprechaun. She even goes to the police cruiser she spots in the distance, but this is where she finds the dead deputy. Thankfully, Nathan and Ozzy arrive to blow another hole in the leprechaun, and he just got a new eye, too. The 3 of them go back to search for a 4-leaf clover, and are successful. Meanwhile, Alex is in the barn pulling some Macaulay Culkin shit, until the leprechaun goes after him. Ozzy distracts the leprechaun by telling him he has the last coin. Alex takes the clover and shoots it into the leprechaun's mouth with a slingshot, while giving probably the best line of the whole movie.
Fuck you, Lucky Charms.
That's the same thing that happens to someone when they eat at Taco Bell. Just to ensure that the leprechaun won't be coming back, Nathan lights the whole well on fire. I mean, it's a valiant effort, but once again, I don't think it worked. And with an ominous warning from the leprechaun himself, the credits roll. This feels like a pretty standard, supernatural, creature feature kind of horror movie. It's an interesting idea to take a being typically portrayed as cute and lovable and twist it into something that could be scary. Speaking of the folklore of leprechauns, that's not far off. The unfortunate thing is nothing really hits home plot-wise for me. It's very loose and simple in the premise. Not saying that's bad, but it's not what you could call a smart movie. Keeping in mind that this was created primarily by a man who had done work on Scooby-Doo. All the same, I can see people sitting down to watch this as just something fun, and for a bit of a laugh. I mean, death by pogo. Warwick Davis worked his ass off during this. It was a pretty active role for him, and I think out of all the cast, he was having the most fun. As he should. While I can't say that I found the leprechaun to be particularly scary, I do think Davis was able to play with both the ridiculously comedic and threatening elements of the character. Without Mr. Davis, I highly doubt the leprechaun would have gotten as far as it has. As far as the other actors are concerned, I don't think that anybody did a poor job. I'm not expecting award-worthy performances here. Everyone did fine. And since this is Jennifer Aniston's first feature film, I think she did well. The settings were kind of interesting, but since they were sticking to the small town vibes, nothing really stuck out extremely. And that's probably a good thing as far as authenticity is concerned. The O'Grady house and property serves as a good location for some hijinks, and everything fits together nicely. I can't complain about anything really. The atmosphere is similar to the settings, though when magic is in play, it passes off well, without being too mystical and upbeat. The special effects are mostly practical, and courtesy of Barnaby Harrison, David Kindlon, John Deal, and Joel Harlow. When it's practical stuff that's being shown, it's actually pretty decent. The look of the leprechaun himself is solid and believable. The wounds lean more heavily on the blood than any actual appliances, but the special effects that aren't practical are painfully obvious. Thankfully, they're not so jarring that they kick you out of the mood of the story. And we have to keep in mind that this wasn't a high-end movie from the early 90s. The score, composed by Kevin Kiner, does really well for this movie. It has just the right balance of sinister and goofy. It plays with the fantasy and supernatural elements of what's going on. Just like the leprechaun himself, it's mythical in tone, but it warns you that there's something wrong here. With all that being said, I'm giving Leprechaun 5 out of 10 bloody thumbs up. This is a film that maybe didn't do so great when it was initially unleashed upon the world, but in the past couple of decades, it seems to be reaching almost cult-like status. From an unbiased viewpoint, I can see why. It has practically everything you could want from a B horror movie. You've got an antagonist that looks pretty good, chasing some people around and causing chaos. It doesn't skimp on the blood and violence, and even relishes in it. We even get a final girl who isn't very annoying. This is by no means the best creature or slasher style movie out there, but it's not the worst either. I know a number of people hate this movie or just don't like it. Obviously, I find myself to be in the middle. It doesn't come close to me hating it, but I'm not adding it to my favorites. Will I watch it again? Probably, and that's because it has something else going for it. Holiday-related story material. We have so few St. Patrick's Day-worthy horror films, and what better to watch on the Irish holiday than the leprechaun bent on vengeance, tearing people apart while laughing the whole way. See you later.